I'm milling about with Steve Byrne. He's the writer, director of the opening act. Morning, Steve.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to see you this early inside of a comedy club. It's nice.
I know, it's funny. I used to roll with comedians back in the early 80s. I wrote for a magazine called Rave. I don't know, it might have been before your time.
Okay.
But it's so true. Like, we literally didn't get going until like 11 o'clock at night.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I lived in New York City and I was a comic at the Comedy Cellar. I had a friend visit me and he's like, yeah, you want to have a drink? It was like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh, it's too early to have a drink. He goes, it's 9. I go, you'll see. We get going around midnight, buddy. It's going to be a long night. So yeah, you know the deal.
Yeah, I think the most fun I've ever had is hanging out with comedians. They are a very interesting crew. And this movie that you wrote is obviously autobiographical.
Yeah, everything, once the lead character, Will, Jimmy O Yang, hits the road, everything that happens in the film, on the road, has happened to me in real life. So you're going to sit there and go, that's a little crazy. Did that? It's like, yes, it really did happen.
So tell me about casting Jimmy, because did you think that you wanted to play the role at any time?
No, when I wrote it as an exercise. And then when it was getting made, Vince Vaughn asked me, do you want to be in it? I said, well, I'm too young to be visually a headliner, and I'm too old to be the MC and feature act. So I'm just happy it's being done. And then he said, why don't you direct it? Little did I know how much responsibility comes with that. But Jimmy O Yang plays a younger version of me. And, when it came to casting it, it's like, since it's so personal to me, I thought, why not cast an Asian American? I wrote it for, myself to see if this project could come to fruition. But, there's very few stand-up comedians that are Asian, very few stand-up comedians that are Asian and working actors. And Jimmy thread that needle. He was the first guy we went to, and thank God we got him.
So tell me how you connected with Vince Vaughn.
Craigslist after 3 a.m. It was a misconnection, I believe. No, when I first moved to LA, he was one of the first guys I met through Ahmed Ahmed. I did the Wild West comedy show. One of the guys had gotten sick and they said, hey, do you want to jump on board and do the show? I said, yeah. And I hadn't met Vince until I did the show. I got a standing ovation. And then he was just like, who the hell is this guy? And 2 weeks later, we're in Costa Rica with a group of friends. And ever since then, we've been best pals. So it's been a great ride so far.
I actually was at that screening in New York, over at the old Brill building, and
Oh, nice.
I walked in on Vince in the bathroom because he
Oh.
did not lock the door.
That sounds like him. He's never paying it. He doesn't lock the doors. He's always losing his phone. Where's my wallet? He's just one of those guys, but he's a genius.
He was so casual about it. He was like, oh, hello.
Very casual, like laid back. And I was just talking to somebody, an interview I done earlier, and they said the first time they met Vince Vaughn, he was at a restaurant and he was talking to the busboys in the kitchen. And it was like, that's so him. He will just talk to anybody. He will literally talk to anybody.
So what did he contribute most to getting this off the ground?
Well, he was very encouraging. He's always been encouraging to me as a comedian. He said, I remember he said, do you audition a lot? I said, not really. He said, there's not many roles for somebody that looks like you unless they make a Riverdance Taekwondo movie being Korean and Irish. You might want to write your own thing. So I wrote Sullivan and Son, and we made it. And then I wrote this screenplay, and we made it. He's been very encouraging. But in terms of the film itself, he's very ardent on story structure and the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell. And so I really got to become very familiar with the hero's journey because of Vince.
Oh, cool. Were there comedians, Steve, that you wanted to get in the movie that weren't available?
Bert Kreischer was one comic that I came up with that I really loved, that I wish he was in it, but he didn't call me back. So we got Tom Segura to take his place. And they're both just such great guys. But most of the comics, it was just like, I just called him up like, hey, Bill, can you come down and Bill Burr would be the office manager for the day. So it was really great casting all the comics. And there was a shorthand too, because we have a scene where Jimmy's character does morning radio for the first time. And I didn't have to explain to actors what it's like for a comic to do morning radio. When Russell Peters, Eliza Schlesinger, and Brooks Wheelan show up, it's like, you guys have been through this before. It's a horrible experience. Let's just try it out. And they knew the role. They knew the scene.
Mm. Did you have a comedy mentor like Cedric?
I've had many mentors along the way, but none more so impactful than Billy Gardell. That's why Cedric's character is named Billy G. It's named after Billy Gardell, who most folks know from Mike and Molly or Bob Loves Abishola. And Billy taught me to be a headliner. We toured together, and he told me a line years ago that stuck in my head like a one-hit wonder that's in the film. And the line is, when I was younger, I used to think I had to make the audience laugh so that I feel good. Now I know I make the audience laugh so that they feel good. It's the best job in the world. And I'm very proud to be Billy's friend, and I'm proud that that line's in the movie.
Also, Steve, nobody realizes how hard stand-up is. It's
Yeah.
probably the toughest profession in the world. Do you agree?
It's pretty brutal. And I think that, you know, the film at its core is about somebody pursuing their dream. And going back to that early day where every comic had one last job before you take that leap of faith. And this is that moment in time. It's about a comic's first time ever going on the road, being in a professional environment, and all those failures that come with trial by fire, from knowing what the light is, getting the intros right, morning radio, hecklers, bachelorette parties, all those things. And I think when the audience sees this all combined in 90 minutes, they'll realize the totality of failure that is encapsulated in a comic's career, especially early on, because you're so new to all this. You don't have the education or knowledge or experience to have an arsenal of weapons up your sleeve to say, I know how to deal with this situation, this situation, this situation. So you might have been to a comedy club, but you've never been on the road. And that's what this film fulfills the promise of.
And so I want to talk to you about the worst heckler that you've ever had. And how did you handle that?
Not well. So the first heckler I had, I remember it was my birthday. It was in New York City. I went to the comic strip live. I had just written a new joke. I was so excited to do this joke. And even on my birthday, I performed. I performed New Year's Eve, holidays, it didn't matter. And I had to get up on stage. So I went up. There's 8 people in the audience. It's 12:30 in the morning. And a group of kids from Jersey are all talking about the bill. I go, guys, can you keep it down? I'm trying to entertain the 4 remaining people here. And they start heckling me. What are you going to do about it, Jackie Chan? I'm saying, well, thank God the Lincoln Tunnel's open 24 hours a day. That upset them. Next thing I know, a bar stool gets picked up, thrown across the room, and I don't have much time to react. So I turn around, the bar stool hits me square in the back of the head, splits my head open. I get 8 staples in the back of my head on my birthday. And I learned that I've got to be better than the situation. So, you know, I got 8 staples to show for it and a big scar on the back of my head when I shaved my head. So, yeah, that was probably the worst one. And the worst part is when you're
That's pretty bad.
when you're a comic and it happens to you, especially in New York City, it gets around. And the next day I showed up at the comic strip, they called me the chairman. I looked at my headshot and somebody had taped staples to my headshot on my head. So, you know, comics will make you feel better and worse at the same time.
Yeah, you got to have a sense of humor about getting your head busted open.
That's right, yeah.
And then on the other side of the spectrum, what about the comedy groupies? I feel like a lot of people don't realize that comedians are kind of like rock stars, and Alex Moffat
Oh,
really
yeah.
put it out there.
He did a great job. In some regards, he stole the film. But, you know, if comics are rock stars, we're the keyboard player in the rock band. We're not that cool, but we're kind of cool, you know? So yeah, I mean, groupies are part of it. And most comics like myself did not do well with girls in high school or college. So now you're a big fish in a small pond. You are the entertainer in Cedar Rapids for the weekend. So yeah, it is kind of fun to indulge in it. But I was Will's character. I was Alex's character for a few years. And then you realize, all right, let's get serious about this job. But it's good to have those years when you're in your 20s.
Absolutely. So did you connect with people over the years, or are you still trying?
In terms of connection, what do you mean?
Like finding the person for you, or you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I met my wife actually on the road. I met her in Orlando. She was in a lounge next door to the comedy club, and in between shows, I was getting a drink, and I invited her she came to the show the next day. We hit it off. I called her every day since I had met her, and within a month, it was like, I'm all in. So it just, the minute I met her, I just knew I was done. I was done on the road. I was done being that guy. I was done being Alex Moffat, you know? So it's been quite a few years since, yeah, it's 2008.
Good for you. And she
Yeah.
gets it. She gets the whole scene, obviously.
She totally gets it, and she understands I go out after the shows. And so when she sees me, when she picks me up at the airport on Sunday and I'm still in my suit, she knows I'd been drinking until 5 in the morning. So she totally gets it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another huge part of the business. It's like, you want a drink? Jerry
Yeah.
Seinfeld asked me to have cocktails with him all the time after gigs. I'm so dating myself right now. I used to.
No, you're talking about one of the greatest.
Gosh, yeah. Who has been the biggest influence on you that's famous now, would you say?
Oh God, that's famous now that was an influence to me. You know, I just have so many friends I came up with that I consider them more friends than anything. But if I was a freshman in the New York comedy scene, then Bill Burr would have been a sophomore. And we would work together at the Cellar all the time, Dangerfields all the time. And we would go to Yankee games and Ranger games. So I have a deep affection for Bill, and to see what he's done lately, I'm not surprised by. I've always thought he was one of my favorites, even when I was a younger comic, and he was my contemporary. But now he's hit another stratosphere where I'm like, we're in two totally different tax brackets. But congratulations, my friend.
So Steve, in light of everything that's happening in the world right now, where do you see the future of stand-up?
I think future is cathartic in terms of stand-up. I was in New York City during 9/11, and people needed some levity in their lives, and comedy was there to provide it. I believe that once the pandemic lifts, comedy clubs will open again, and people need now more than ever, with the recession, global food shortages, racial tensions at an all-time high, a presidential election coming up. Comedy is an essential business. So if you live in a red state, you can go to a comedy club. Until then, there's the opening act.
I love it. And comedy cures all, right?
That's right. Laughter is the best medicine. And I truly believe in these days, we need it more than ever. And there's been so few comedies being released during this time. And a lot of people are jonesing to get back to the comedy club. So I think this is two birds with one stone, you know?
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Steve. It is a really fun film.
Thank you so much. It truly means a lot to me. And knowing that you've hung out with comics, you've indulged in the nightlife, which it sounds like you've had. To hear
And I'm still here.
You're still here. That's right, baby. I love it. Well, thank you so much. It means a lot to me to hear that from you. And I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I apologize.
It's all good. Take care.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself. Bye now.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Always news. Always refreshing. Always candid. Always milling about. Robin Milling delivers what celebrities are saying to you.